So you've compared various screening media and you've determined that wire mesh molds will be your option for your molded pulp operation. You've created a formula for the perfect pulp slurry and you're about ready to buy your woven wire mesh. But before you do, getting to know the buying process will ensure you time everything out so that the wire mesh order isn't hindering your production. Having said that, what should you expect when ordering woven wire mesh for molded pulp? Having as much information as possible when contacting a woven wire mesh supplier will ensure the best results. So with that in mind, there are 3 things you should have ready: quantity, dimensions, sample requirements, and shop drawings. The wire mesh supplier will work with your engineering team to establish what mesh count, wire diameter, alloy, etc. will work best for you. In order for your wire mesh supplier to properly work out the logistics and ensure you have the material you need to keep the production line running, you should have an understanding of how much mesh you will need. A standard mesh roll is 48 inches by 33 feet, so knowing how much mesh you need in square footage will allow the mesh supplier to weave the right amount of mesh. And if you're using cut to size pieces, you'll want to provide the exact dimensions of the cut to size piece and how many you need. Now, we understand that you must implement new pulp slurry formulations in order to keep your customers happy. As current wire mesh specifications may not perform as well when introduced to new pulp slurry formulas, you may find value in trying various specification samples. By being transparent on what issues you may be trying to resolve will, again, allow the wire mesh supplier to point you in the right direction. And naturally, you will want to give dimensions in accordance to how the mesh will sit in your equipment, as samples cannot be ordered in rolls. We've come to understand that most molded pulp manufacturers prefer to fabricate their wire mesh molds in-house. However, some just don't simply have the capacity. Regardless, certain wire mesh suppliers can fabricate your wire mesh molds for you. If you find yourself seeking a wire mesh supplier to fabricate your wire mesh molds, you'll want to have a drawing of the mesh molds ready to submit. This will not only help the wire mesh supplier determine whether or not they can produce the mold, but it will also allow them to communicate lead times and pricing more accurately. There are 2 heat treating processes that are used on woven wire mesh, and that's sintering and annealing. Naturally, these heat treatment processes will increase both the price and lead times of your mesh. That said, annealing is the only heat treating process applied to wire mesh when being applied to molded pulp applications. Annealing is the heat treatment process in which wire mesh is heated until the internal stress of the wire is lowered. In turn, the mesh becomes softer and way more pliable. This can especially be beneficial to those attempting to create complex molds with a lot of detail. Annealing will not only allow the wire mesh to be precisely formed, but it will ensure the mesh holds its form for long-term use. Neglecting to implement wire mesh that is properly annealed increases the risk of springback, the occurrence in which wire mesh molds lack structural integrity and spring back to a flatter profile. Wire mesh that is not annealed properly also tends to be sleazy or flimsy, which can directly affect the fiber retention capacity of your molds. The buying process always begins with you identifying a wire mesh supplier that can accommodate your needs, whether it be supply rolls, partial rolls, or cut to size pieces, and requesting a quote. While not completely necessary, informing the supplier on how the wire mesh will be used will help facilitate the process. The more information you provide, the better the mesh supplier can make suggestions and help perfect your process. Once the quantity and dimensions of your rolls and cut to size pieces have been selected, or it is determined that your wire mesh mold can be fabricated, the mesh supplier will issue a quote that itemizes each expense of the order. You will then need to either approve the quote or go back to the mesh supplier with any adjustments that need to be made. After approving the quote, your next step will then be to send over a purchase order. The supplier will then confirm that the purchase order has been received, providing you with lead times and tracking information. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, click our Talk to Us button to get in contact with our many experts on woven wire mesh. And if you'd like to learn more about woven wire mesh or our many products, we have a learning center filled with written and video content to make you an expert. We also have a YouTube channel. And don't forget to click that subscribe button and ring that bell to keep up with all things WS Tyler. Once again, my name is Andrew Kotlar, and I'll see you around in the next video. Bye for now.